to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah. I am so happy to be with you to bring you another episode, another author interview. As we get started, I want to remind you, as I try to do at the beginning of every episode, to please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you are either listening to or watching this episode on. Really does help the algorithm get the podcast out to more readers, such as yourselves. Also, if you would like to support the podcast and the network as a whole in a monetary fashion, you may do so by going to gsmcpodcast.net. There you can leave a tip or a donation. As I said, this helps not only the podcast, but the network as a whole. Your support is always greatly appreciated, no matter what form that support takes. If while you are at gsmcpodcast.net, you want to also leave a question, I'm happy to engage with those, love hearing from you, happy to read those and try to answer them the beginning of during an episode after, of course, receiving that. I say that, but I'm not going to answer them before I receive them. Of course, it's going to be after. Anyway, your support, as I said, is very much appreciated, no matter what form that support takes. Again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net to support the podcast in a monetary fashion. Thank you, as always, for everything that you do to support this podcast, whether you've been here from the beginning, whether you are a new watcher or listener. Very, very appreciated. Welcome, and thanks for being here. I hope your week is going well. It's the last week of May. If you are in the United States and celebrated Memorial Day over the weekend, I hope you had a good, long weekend if you got Monday off. Did something fun, maybe spent time with family, honored the people in your lives that we remember on Memorial Day, whatever that holiday looks like for you. I hope it was a good weekend. It was a busy weekend for us. My hubby and I both worked a lot this weekend and got a lot accomplished, but it's been a lot of meetings for both of us. Me, especially over the weekend and then the last 2 days, I've been pretty consistent in the number of meetings I had. He had fewer over the weekend, but then yesterday woke up to just a million, 8 million, 10, I don't even know. Yeah, that's hyperbole, but there was a lot of scheduled meetings that were on his calendar somewhat suddenly, with good reason, but somewhat suddenly. And thankfully he's an extrovert, so he loves talking to people, and he's tired, but he loves it and he gets energized from it. Whereas you can hear my voice starting to go a little bit from talking for the last 4 days. And as an introvert, it definitely makes me tired after I talk to people. And I like talking to people. I really enjoy talking to people, getting to know people and everything. But after a while, I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to be done. I need to do something that is not speaking. Maybe just sit quietly and stare at the wall even, or read. Usually that's my answer. I'm going to read or zone out on the internet. But, social media can suck you in at times, as I'm sure you know. But we are not here to talk about that. I have been getting out a little bit with the dogs at night. We're still going for walks at night because something has to wear off some of that puppy energy. So we walk down to see the horse, and depends on how much energy the old man dog has after we go see the horse. It depends on the length of the rest of the walk. But the puppy has energy. If I could figure out how to bottle that, it would be awesome, because he was awake at 2:30 this morning. Clearly not a long enough walk last night, because 2:30 to 3:30 this morning, he just wanted to play. He wasn't loud. He was just very, very busy. And I finally had to put him in his crate, because he could not be on the bed with us anymore. He was too busy. And he went to sleep, and he slept until 7:30. So thank goodness for that, because I needed to go to sleep. And Chalupa, poor old man dog, he's just over the puppy energy. But I'm thinking if I could figure out how to bottle that puppy energy for the other members of this family, we would all be very appreciative of it right now, because we could use extra energy with as busy as we've been this past week. This is a really bad segue, but bottling puppy energy. It's a speculative technology, and today's book is a TechnoThriller. Bad segue. I tried. It didn't work, but you see where I was going with that. let's just appreciate the effort from a very tired podcast host. And let's talk about this week's author interview. I am speaking with J.W. Jarvis about his, as I said, TechnoThriller, Artificial Agent. Let me go ahead and give you the description of the book. Captured, tortured, and left for dead. Pieced back together with experimental tech, can this courageous soldier prevent a cataclysmic war? Loyalty runs through Michael Cooling's veins. Abandoned by his father as a kid and devoted to his mother, the highly decorated Navy SEAL gladly leads a mission to extract two Ukrainian generals held by Russia. But after falling into the hands of a brutal Russian officer and nearly killed, the heroic patriot ends up comatose in a hospital bed and unknowingly paralyzed. Determined to escape a wheelchair-bound existence, the wounded warrior undergoes surgery to integrate an untested high-tech endoskeleton into his ravaged human flesh. And as he trains tirelessly to adapt to his new synthetic body, he develops an unprecedented strength and speed he hopes will help him crush those who could see the USA fall. Yet as old hatreds come to roost, will his newfound powers be enough to stop the world being brought to its knees? So that is the description of Artificial Agent. As you can see, it is definitely techno-thriller. We've got some technology. You heard about the endoskeleton. You hear about a new kind of super human being created with the main character, Michael. And we'll talk, of course, more about that. But if techno-thrillers are something that you enjoy, then definitely tune in for the research, the speculative fiction, those sorts of things. It is a very interesting idea of what the main character goes through and what he becomes, and also his character arc as he continues to adapt and evolve a little bit with this new way of being, because he is very different physically than what he was before. And how does that affect your psyche and your mental state and all of those things? Well, the main character has to figure that out as well. There is a very villainous villain in this book who is not a nice guy. You know, he's the villain. And then we've got some other a couple other points of view as well. We get some of Michael's mother's point of view, a character named Jasmine we're going to talk about in the interview. So you get some points of view, but of course Michael is the main character. We've got the villain and his place in this story. So let's go ahead and turn to the conversation with J.W. Jarvis. Again, the book is called Artificial Agent. Hi, J.W. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for being here. I am excited to talk about your book, Artificial Agent. But before we do that, if you would just take a few moments to introduce yourself, let my listeners get to know you a bit.
Sure, sure. So I'm a fairly new author. I've been doing it for about 2.5 years now, and I'm also a technologist. So I've been in the IT industries for well, probably 3 decades now. So so I know a lot about IT. I don't know as much about authoring, but I was hoping to kind of blend the two a little bit in this book. And so that's what I did. And I'm also just really interested in learning the trade more. And so I'll be writing a lot more books in the future.
Wonderful. I'm just thinking about how much IT has evolved in the 3 decades that you have been doing that. That's a lot.
Mhm. Yes, yes, it's a constant battle to try to keep up to date on technology and trends and just stay ahead of your competitors. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, as you said, you are combining them with this novel. There is a lot of technology in the novel. So, can you give an overview of Artificial Agent?
Yeah, so artificial agent is it sort of came to be as I've always been fascinated even as a young child about one of the things that really fascinated me was the $6 million man. And I just loved how I thought that was ahead of its time, talking about bionics and how it can help someone and then, create like a super someone.
Hmm.
And so I always thought, that really needs some updating because it's been like literally 50 years since that came out. And I'm like, there's so much technology that has advanced over time, and it's like there could be somebody so much better than the old $6 million man. And so that's where I came up with sort of the goal to make a new sort of $6 million man, but instead they would be an artificial agent, and they would have not only bionics but aonics, which is AI interfaced bionics. And
Mhm.
so aonic is a trademark that I have registered pending. But basically, it leverages the power of AI with the power of bionics.
Yeah. And nowadays it would not be $6 million. You wouldn't get much
Oh
for a
no, no,
six
no,
million
no,
dollar man.
no. Yeah, I don't even know if 6 billion could do it, to be
Just
honest, with some of the
just
stuff I have in there. But I think just like anything over time, it can be commoditized, and I think you'll see in the some of the research I've done, and even just if you research yourself, there's a lot of advancements in bionics alone, and people, even kids, are getting like bionic hands or bionic arms, and it's pretty cool. So it's not too far from the future. So that's what I try to make this book, something that's possible and realistic.
yeah. So $6 million man was part of your inspiration for the story. How about the main character Michael? What was your inspiration for his character?
So, my first, so I've always thought it was important to sort of in a lot of these books is to have like a hero type. And my first series that I wrote, which is the First Responder series, is about first responders. It's a middle grade young adult series, and I really like writing about people in society that are sort of taken for granted. I feel like in my opinion. I've never been one, and I haven't been one because not because I don't want to be here, but because I felt like I had an IT mind, and also IT is very lucrative, so I
Mhm.
decided to go that route. But
Fair enough.
if I had another chance, or I could have live a double life, I would love to do these type of roles. And so I figured like I also think that the military is another unsung hero type positions out there, and so Michael Cooling is a Navy SEAL, and he has been serving his country and very proud of his country and wants to do the best to whatever it takes. And so he's a very successful Navy SEAL, but he comes upon a his success basically nips him in the butt, and he gets him in trouble. And you'll find that out in the book, but that's how he came to be the hero in my story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the main character really is just was just doing his job for the most part. I mean, it's the classic case of actions have consequences, and in this case, they are really not good consequences for what happens. But of course, you have to have the jumping off point for every arc, and this character's arc happens to start with a fairly catastrophic event that then necessitates the surgery that he undergoes, of course. So every story has to start somewhere, and his started with the consequences of him doing his job too well in this case. We're going to go ahead and take our first break of this episode. When we come back, the ick factor. And you know that I always talk about the eek and the ick factor in thrillers, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with J.W. Jarvis. We're talking about his TechnoThriller Artificial Agent. As I mentioned before the break, we're going to talk about the ick factor, although I don't call it that in the interview. But you know me and thrillers, there's the eek factor, which is how scary it is. And I felt like this was not high on the eek factor in terms of like keeping me up at night, being that kind of like very, very scary thriller. There's some intense elements to this story, of course. There is a bit of an ick factor, but it's low on the scale of ick in that it's not always explicitly explained. There's enough left to your imagination that the ick factor is lowered. So that is my take on the ick factor, and we're about to talk about that. So let's get back into the conversation with JW. Personally, as a reader, I would like to say thank you for not making it more graphic than it is. My imagination did just fine. So thank you for not spelling it out for me. We don't need to talk about the details, but thank you.
Yeah. I try to make it so, I mean, my goal with this book was not only to make it sort of a science fiction type book, but also a thriller. So I
Mhm.
wanted it to be very engaging. And so there had to be some of those scenes where it kind of got you a little bit thinking about, what would happen next. And some of it was a little bit jolting, but I think it's important because it shows how humanity can be so cruel, right? And so evil. And so there has to be good in this world, and these heroes are who do the good. So
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, talk a little bit more about Michael. What about him as the protagonist do you think will resonate with readers?
I think somebody that kind of put his even his personal life on hold for his career. And I think that's something that a lot of us do sometimes. It's not, I don't think that it's good to not have a balance. And I think he's struggling trying to find his balance throughout the story. And then he gets put into this situation where that balance is even more, the scales are even more on the sort of the obligations and responsibility side from his career. So it's a struggle. I think they'll understand that, and I also think that it's exciting to have newfound type powers, right?
Mhm.
Something that like even when you even something simple as for even everyday people is when you learn something new and you're like, wow, I didn't even know we could do that, right?
Yeah.
And it's just something like it's just exciting because you want to just take it further, right? So you want to either expand on what you've learned, or maybe if it's a skill-based thing, you want to get better skills, you want to get better at say pickleball, or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's just so it's like that for him. It's that struggle between the balance of life, personal and work life, and then also what do you do with all these new skills you have?
Yeah. Were there any challenges in writing his character? Because he does go through quite the evolution physically. But were there any challenges in writing him, kind of keeping him human as his story went on?
Yeah, and I think it's funny because I got some of my reviews were like they would like to see maybe a short story or a novella about how he adapted a little bit more. So I kind of went
Mm.
into it's hard because you only have so many pages in a book, right? And so I wanted to keep the story going, and but there is a phase where he learns his new skills. But people were like, "Hey, I'd like to learn more about how he did that," right? And so maybe in the future, that's what I write is a novella about how he trained and how he became more apt at his skills. But yeah, it was a transition for him, a tough transition, and he did have a lot of help along the way. But there was some, as you can see in the story, there were times where you could tell he just wasn't ready yet. So
Yeah, well, who would be? He didn't have any prep time. Um,
yeah.
so potential novella, maybe someday in the future. Do you want to continue? Will this be a series or is this a standalone?
So I made it a standalone, but I also made it with an option for a series. So like I'd love to write a second book about him. I wanted to see how it did in the market, just like any writer does, and let it mature a little bit over time. It just came out in January, so yeah, I'd like to see how it did in the market. Meanwhile, I'm writing a different book right now, but I'd like to see how it does, and if there's an aptitude for it or a demand for it, I'd love to do another book. So, hey, readers, tell me what you want, and I will do it. So,
Fair enough. Um, you mentioned the evil exists in the world, which it absolutely does. So talk a little bit about the villain of the piece, GIP, or do you say
yeah,
GIP or do you just say
I
the
I think you could say GIP, but I like GIP because
okay?
it's short and
But
sweet. So
sure.
GIP, so it's General Ivan Petrovsky. So he is a so there is some parallels there, and I hope the readers would see it. There is some parallels with real world things, of course, not 100%, but there are some parallels. But really, it's a he's a prior leader in the Russian military that went into a paramilitary type establishment, and he developed his own paramilitary, and you've seen that in many different countries. And so his paramilitary objectives are a little bit different and a little bit more skewed than even the Russian objectives. So in some ways, I feel like they give these paramilitary people the resources and the people and the men or women, but then they don't really ch keep them in balance or check out what they're doing or keep them in check, I should say. And so they sometimes reign a little bit too free, and so that's what Gip does. He took his experience, he took his fundings, and he takes direction from Mother Russia, but unfortunately he has his own objective as well, which is to the detriment of the United States.
Yeah. Yep. When it comes to characters and character development, do you tend to have a really good idea and understanding of your characters before you start writing, or do you prefer to let them evolve as you write?
Both. I try to start with characters because I want to think about who they are before I start putting them down on paper and then evolving a story. But then I try to think of it like as I'm writing, I try to think of it as what would the person think about this situation and then how would they react? And so sometimes I have to explain that, right? And that sort of explains to the reader what their thinking is and what their character is. And so I think over time, as things happen to the character, you learn more about the character, right? And so that's where some of it I can pre-plan, but some of it just the story happens and it's like, well, how would this person deal with this? And so then you have to sort of explain to the reader in some ways how they would deal with it. And so the character development happens over time, of course. But I do like to have some steady state characters, especially when it's the main protagonists and the antagonists in the story.
Sure. Michael is the main character, but you get multiple points of view throughout the book. So, did you start out wanting to write multiple points of view, one point of view? Did that change as you continued writing?
Yeah, I tried to make it so that at least so each chapter is its own point of view for the character, and that's what I tried to stay with so that it's not confusing. But I did want to have some other strong characters, and one of them was a very strong female character, um, who, and to some people's chagrin, is or doubts, is the actually the first female Navy SEAL
Mhm.
to enter that military rank. And so I actually did an interview with the military group that does interviews for military, and they were questioning it. And I'm like, well, we also didn't think we'd be on the moon, in the 60s, and we also didn't think that we'd have a rocket that blasts off and lands on its own, without any harm, many years ago. So everybody thinks things are impossible until they're possible, right? So like that's the other part of the story is I wanted to make something like I know that the Navy, the GU, the Dev GRU, the Navy SEAL to get to become a Navy SEAL was very intense and very tough on the body and very tough on the mind. And so like people questioned, but I'm like, why not? Like I mean there's there's very strong females in this world, right? And so why not, right? So I mean I wanted to make it so that it kind of challenged people a little bit.
I love that in a book that has a man who basically has an exoskeleton and is now this superhuman, what they're questioning is whether or not a woman can or should be a Navy
Yeah,
SEAL.
I know, right? Right. But I
Um,
mean, it's like everybody, it's funny. Like I don't mind. I don't mind people's critiques and things and questions. I think it makes it more interesting. I didn't want to make it so that it was boring, and I didn't want to make it so people, didn't question it. I want people to question things and I don't get their imaginations flowing. So
yeah, absolutely. I think fiction absolutely should make us wonder what is possible and why haven't certain things happened yet, and are they possible in the future, and when might they be possible? So for me, it wasn't even a question that there was a female Navy SEAL in the book. It's fiction. I was like, cool, female Navy SEAL. Not saying it's never going to happen. Don't know when it's going to happen. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's impossible. So, didn't even occur to me to be like, whoa, that's weird. That can't be possible. I mean, again, we've got a main character who has an endoskeleton. I'm not gonna be concerned by the female Navy SEAL, but everyone reads differently, and there's certain things that might take people out of a story. That's not for me to judge, but for me, fiction should make me wonder and read things that seem impossible, but maybe they're not. Maybe they make me think in a different way. That's the joy of reading fiction to me. But anyway, we're going to take our second break of this episode. When we come back, some of the research that went into writing this novel. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
The best and latest podcasts available anywhere. Go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with J.W. Jarvis. Before the break, we were talking about the character of Jasmine and her possibly impossible character, but speculative fiction, or fiction that should make you speculate what is possible. Also, fiction often makes us suspend disbelief at times, and it helps to enjoy the story more. But I'll get off of my soapbox and we'll go back to the conversation with JW. You mentioned research. So what types of research did you do for the book?
oh gosh, it was crazy. I think that's one of what was the biggest challenges for me. So this story goes all around the world, and I have been many places in the world, not as many as I'd like to, but there are many places that I have not been, and so I had to research about those places because I wanted the story to happen there. So I had to do a lot of research of what would make it realistic in those places, like for instance, in the Baltics, seas and area. And then just in general over in Eastern Europe, I haven't really had a chance to be that far east in Europe. So I had to do a lot of research there. And then probably the most research I did was on technology because I wanted to make this a realistic representation. So everything, all the technology in this story exists. So whether it can be applied is another issue to discuss. So applying it can be very expensive. Of course, that's why it's, not probably not in reality right now, but it all exists and it all could be applied. And so, things like applied materials, different types of ways you could construct bionics or aonics. So I wanted to make it so that it's very possible it's just a little bit hard to reach because of the price range and because of the fact that many companies or entities would not do this because they just don't think there's enough return on investment from it, right? Whereas as you'll understand in the story, an eccentric billionaire might have a different opinion.
Right.
So when you have billions to spend and a couple billion doesn't matter to you, it's a different story.
Yeah. So it's based on actual technology. Just the speculative part comes in the fact that it's kind of far out of reach for most of the world in terms
Right.
of,
Most of the world that are not billionaires, yeah, or have the time to do this type of research and investigation and when you're building things, you make mistakes and you have to rebuild and trial and error. So most companies aren't going to do that for this type of technology. But I wanted to make it so that it is possible.
yeah. What draws you to writing? I'd call this a techno thriller. What draws you to this genre?
I think it's a little bit of my background that I have an IT background, so I really think it's fun to write about things that sort of leverage both IT and a sort of a thriller genre mindset. And so that was exciting to me. I didn't even know until started thinking about it for a while. I didn't even know that techno thrillers exist really. I thought everything's just a thriller, right? But then I realized, yeah, there is actually a genre techno thriller, and so I was like, why not? And it was fun to research the technology. A little bit of a spoiler here, but just the fact that one of our animals or insects in nature can develop a web that's stronger than, the material that's in a bulletproof vest is amazing to me. Like I just like I mean how is that possible? But it is possible, right? So it's like I wanted to make it so that not only is there technology in there, but there's also like applied materials. Like there's so many things we haven't even discovered yet that we can do with Mother Nature. So.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Mhm.
Just figure out how to replicate it,
Who,
whatever they
who,
do.
who would think that spider silk could be stronger than a ballistic a bulletproof vest? So
Yeah, Kevlar. Yeah, exactly. You mentioned earlier that you are working on something new. Can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, so I'm working on yet another thriller. I actually love writing thrillers because one, it makes it exciting to write because you always got to keep people on your toes, so you're keeping yourself on your toes, right? And so as you're writing it, you want to keep the story moving, and I love that. And when I read too, I enjoy reading thrillers as well because it's just like a page turner, right? You want to know what happens next, and so I'm writing a psychological thriller this time because I've been reading some of those. I've been reading some of the psychological thrillers, and I really enjoyed them. And I'm like, I want to write one of those. And so I'm writing a psychological thriller, and it's got some technology in it as well, but it's mostly a psychological thriller, and it's basically about a woman that sort of has been down on her luck for a while, and had to get divorced, and but then she is finds this amazing opportunity after months finally with this new job, but this new job is not really what she thinks it is. So it kind of like she's starting to discover what this job is, and even though on the surface it seems so great, below as she starts digging deeper into the job, it's not as um as how shall I say it uh quaint or as normal as she thought it would be. So
Seems too good to be true. It might actually be too good to be true.
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
You've been in IT for a long time and just came to writing recently. What was the final push or impetus to decide now's the time to try and to maybe write for publication?
Yeah, great question. So I started looking into it, and I my first book that I wrote, The Phantom Firefighter, I tried to go down the normal route, the publishing route, but I was obviously my first book, no experience, and I tried to go down the publishing route, and after like I don't know 50 rejections, right? I was like, well, I mean, I'll just self-publish it then. So I was like, let me just figure out self-publishing. So I decided to figure that out. And I guess the impetus to actually very start was I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I never really did it. And I just thought, um, as I get closer to, say, maybe retiring from my other job, I want to have something to do when I retire. I don't want to be just, I think retirement is important, but I also think you can't just sit around and do nothing because your mind will just retire and fade away, and so will your body. So I've always been one of those like always be learning, always be improving yourself. And so I want to do that even in retirement. And so I was like, what's a thing that you could do in retirement, right? That you could do from home or do from anywhere and still do it. And so I was like, well, why don't I try this? Because I've always wanted to do it anyways. So I figured, why not start now? And then maybe when I am, actually do retire from my IT job, I can actually do this full time. So that was kind of the thought
Okay.
process.
Yeah, makes sense. Why not start now? Seems like an excellent question in a variety of situations. As often happens when we talk about books and why authors write, I come up. I think many of the things they say in terms of writing and their journey to publication or whatever it was, often applies to other situations as well. So we're going to take our final break of this podcast. We can all contemplate the question of why not start now? What is it that you might want to start and have been thinking about? You are tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back. Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my interview with author J.W. Jarvis. As we head into this last segment, just one final reminder that you can support the podcast and the network as a whole in a monetary fashion by going to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or a donation, a question or a comment. It helps not only the podcast, but the network as a whole. As I keep saying, all of your support is greatly appreciated. But one final reminder, gsmcpodcast.net, if that is something that you would like to do. And I thank you in advance if that is something you'd like to do. Before the break, we were talking about JW's journey to starting to write for publication. And so let's go ahead and go back to the conversation with JW Jarvis. From your experience, then, what advice would you give to someone who also wants to write?
Yeah. Well, I'd say be patient. I think it's a tough practice. I mean, I think uh, any of the entertainment arts are hard to get into. I think if you have the skills though, or you have the initiative, I think that will drive you. But don't be disappointed when things don't turn out the way you thought they would. I think it takes time, it takes growth, it takes experience. Be patient with the process. Don't rely on it as your only source of income if you're worried about that. Because I mean,
Mhm.
until you can really get going, it's similar to like investing, right? You're not going to just rely on your first time investing, right? You're never going to make it, right? So you gotta learn how to invest over time, and then maybe, you can rely on it. But I think that's what it is just be patient with the process, enjoy it, and have fun with it. And my other piece of advice is find the best way and the easiest way to edit your stuff because editing is really tough. So,
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you have to make things change and it's,
hmm
is, I'm sure, a beast. Um,
hmm
yeah. You mentioned reading thrillers, so when you take time to read for yourself, I assume thrillers are up there, but what are your other go-to genres and some of your favorite authors?
Well, I've been reading, so let's see here. I love James Patterson, of course. I love Frida McFadden. I can't stop reading her books now. I don't know how she can write so many books so quickly. It's amazing to me. But um and I even like some of the old ones. I've got a George Orwell sitting on my shelf that I've been wanting to read. I just haven't had time to read it yet. And then I also like self-help books too. I read a lot of self-help books. So whether it's about one I just finished was about negotiating,
Mm,
and it I learned how to negotiate like an FBI hostage negotiator. So just it's crazy, but I mean, I don't know why I would go that route when I'm, in more of the fiction genre, but I do like nonfiction too because you learn a lot of life skills. And so I've been reading some of that stuff as well. But the other writer that I would say probably got me going and helped me start my career was Mark Dawson. He's a thriller writer, and he had a program where you could sign up and you could learn about self-publishing. And so I went through his program, and that kind of got me intrigued as well as helped me learn some of the basics.
okay. You mentioned the self-help and yeah, learning how to negotiate like an FBI agent makes a lot of sense when you write thrillers. You never know when some of that's gonna come in handy.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, you gotta. I think reading is just so key, and I wish our youth would embrace it more. And that's one of the reasons I wrote my young adult series is I was hoping to get more people interested in reading. I mean, I know it's just a small amount, compared to all the books out there, but I
Right.
think the more books we have that interest our youth, the better. Get them off the screens, get them reading, because it just really, I think, builds their character, builds their mental clarity, builds their skill set, and their imagination. So.
Mm. Yeah, sure. Um, I know you have a website, so if you can share your website and any social media that you're active on, if people want to learn more.
Yeah, for sure. So my website's really easy. It's just www.authorjwjarvis.com. And then it's real simple for all my social media handles. All of them are at author JW Jarvis. So that makes it really easy, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And yeah, if you have, I'd love to hear feedback on things you'd like to see in my writing in the future. I love reader feedback. I read all my reviews, and I always I take them to heart as well. Like if they have ideas, I will think about them for my next book, or I will consider them for different books. But I love hearing reader feedback.
Thank you. JW, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to make sure you highlight or mention at this time?
I would just say, I would say if you have some goals out there, work toward those goals little by little, day by day. Don't try to boil the ocean, as they say. Uh, if you have something in mind that you want to do, write it down or put it in your diary or notebook or your notes on your phone, and just do something daily for it. Even if it's just an hour a day, you can do more than an hour, great. But if you do incremental, you'll meet your goals in the future.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for taking your time. It's a long weekend, so I appreciate you taking time to talk to me about the book.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you once again to JW for joining me to talk about Artificial Agent. If you are a fan of thrillers in general and techno thrillers specifically, then you should definitely check this out. If you are not a fan of thrillers, or maybe you have a young adult in your life, then there's also the young adult series that he has written, the First Responder series. That may be something you want to check out as well, although we didn't talk about that as much. But of course, you can go to his website and learn more about all of his books and see if there's something that is of interest to you. But if you're a fan of techno thrillers, then you might want to check out Artificial Agent. There is a lot of very interesting technology that is utilized in this book, and in interesting ways. So, or maybe you, like JW, grew up loving the Bionic Man. That was a part of a lot of our childhoods, and so this is what did I say? The Bionic Man? That was the Bionic Woman, the $6 million man. You know what I mean. I'm tired. But maybe you grew up watching The Bionic Woman as well. Either way. But updated versions of those shows from some of our childhoods. I think it's time to wrap this up before I get into more sentences and cannot remember what in the heck I went into that sentence for. But please do check out JW's website and these books if they are at all intriguing to you. I hope that you will also join me for the next interview. Next week, I will be speaking with Patrick Canning about his book, For Your Benefit. I like the line here, a detective novel, sort of, it says. That line, a detective novel, sort of, and the line from the description of the book, which is the power of empathy collides with the dangers of disinformation, is all I'm going to tell you about this book, because I think that and the cover are intriguing enough. So if those things combine to make you intrigued about this book, For Your Benefit, please join me for the next episode when I'll be speaking to Patrick Canning about this novel. In the meantime, as always, if you're a fan of this podcast, please do a few things. Like, follow, subscribe on whatever platform you are either listening to or watching the episode on. Gets the podcast out to more readers, helps that algorithm. It's greatly appreciated. Also, something else that really helps, you may not believe it, but it really helps, leaving a review. Do it for your favorite authors. Do it for your favorite podcasts. The world runs on algorithms anymore, so leaving a review is incredibly helpful. Don't overthink it. One sentence is great. Positive reviews are best. Thank you so much. If you're on social media and you want to follow the podcast, you can do so on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Come find the podcast. You get me too. You can ask questions. Love hearing from you. Let me know what you're reading, etc., etc. I hope you're having a great week. Hope you had a good long weekend if you celebrated Memorial Day, whether you got Monday off but whatever your weekend involved, I hope it was great. Hope your week is going well so far, but regardless, as I always say, I hope whatever this week is throwing at you, it's giving you plenty of time to get yourself lost in a good book. Thank you so much.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to